Never worry again about sales tax with Davo by Avalara. From collecting to filing to paying, Davo works seamlessly with your POS, backed by a guarantee that your taxes will be paid on time and in full. You take care of the business, we'll take care of the sales tax.
All right, I'm here with Victor Fernandez. Victor, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right. So before we really begin, tell us who you are and what you do.
So Victor Fernandez, like you mentioned, I'm head of insights for Black Box Intelligence, and been with the company for a very, very long time. It's been over 20 years for me. So basically that means a lot of time looking at restaurant data and trying to make sense of it.
Have you heard of a concept called Red Lobster?
I have heard a thing or two about them lately, yes.
All right. So I guess my big question, as we as we record this yesterday, they filed for bankruptcy, and a very much anticipated bankruptcy filing because they've been signaling for pretty much several months that they were heading in this direction. Do you got a sense at all whether we could see, not that you necessarily know about the finances, but what we see here is a lot of full service concepts in particular have really lost a lot of share. Could we see something like this continue to happen, or what's going on in full service, I guess?
So that's a great question from expanding it to full service, because that's really what we're seeing right now. What we've been seeing recently is that middle of the industry is getting kind of squeezed out. Inflation has been very, very high the last few years. For a while there, the consumer has been overall, even to today, we see the consumer being very resilient. And we're talking about this with some people here at the show, where it almost feels like the way we approach restaurants have shifted, from a more of a luxury thing or a treat or a once in a while, back when I was a kid, at least, to more of it's part of necessity. It's part of what we do, part of what we like doing every day. We're leading busy lifestyle. So we're still going to restaurants a lot. But what we're seeing really is a lot of those orders now got shifted, traded down to quick service, to fast casual, and away from family dining and casual dining. So that's where we've seen a lot of pressure on that middle of the industry, and results are not as positive as we'd like to see in those sectors.
Mm-hmm. The thing that struck me, and I was looking at their bankruptcy filing, they lost 30% of their traffic since 2019.
Yeah.
Is that unusual?
Well, yes and no. So it's unusual for it to be that big, right? But we've been tracking the data on our side. And when you look at same store traffic, 2016 through 2023, we've seen the industry lose about 16% of that traffic. So yes, it's a lot higher than that. But the norm has been for declining same store traffic. And, when you think about it, the reality of it, at least from our perspective, is a combination of it's getting really expensive to eat at a restaurant. We look at the inflation numbers, and, I think the numbers from 2015 to 2023, restaurant prices have gone up by 44%, grocery only up by 26%. So just from that perspective, it's a big gap. When I look at that 44%, the first thing I think is, well, if I'm going to keep my number of visits constant and pretty much spend at the same level, my income would have had to increase by 5% roughly every single year during that period. And not many people out there can say, yes, my income grew by 5% every single year, right? So just from there, you're starting to cut down. And then the fact that there's been explosive growth in the number of restaurants in the limited service space. So we're seeing some closures in full service, but the growth has been so big in limited service, it's double digits over the, from pre-COVID, and that's just chain. You got to think about, of course, right? All the independents, all the grocery stores, the convenience stores, everyone that's got prepared foods now, the virtual brands that kind of came and seem to have gone away a little bit. But in general, there's all those different options. Then that simply, if you want to have a meal, and we all want to have a good meal once in a while from a restaurant, there's so many options that it gets diluted, and simply same store, it's hard to keep those numbers up.
Yeah. Do you think that they're going to, because you remember years ago, we used to always talk about trade down and that full service customers, like if you remember the Great Recession or anytime we have any sort of restaurant challenges, we hear this talk about trading down. Customers are trading down from casual dining to fast casual, and from fast casual to quick service, and then quick service to gas stations, and then gas stations to nothing because whatever.
Right.
I mean, do we get the sense because I mean, it's not as if quick service traffic is actually burning the world right now.
Right.
It's not exact. They're losing customers too. I mean,
Yeah.
are full service customers just not eating out? Or are they going to quick service restaurants, or what are they doing?
We think they're trading down, and I think the data suggests that they are trading down because yes, like if you look at, for example, Q1 data or even 2023 data, it's traffic is down for all segments in the industry. But when you look at for example, Q1 traffic for quick service much better than for everyone else. And I took a look recently about the last 10 weeks. So took out January, February. There were some weather comparisons there that made the data noisy, but just March, April, middle of May, quick service still number one in terms of traffic, still negative, but less than 1% negative compared to everyone else that's down by a lot more. Fast casual is number two in that list. And then at the bottom, you see family dining and you see casual dining. So it seems to suggest that, yes, everyone's losing traffic, but the rate at which quick service is following is a lot slower, where, part of it is like those that were going to casual dining and family dining, now they're going there. And again, too many restaurants in that space. When you think about, I think it's 13, 14% growth we've seen in terms of limited service restaurants in chain over the last 4 years compared to 19. So a lot of new options there. So overall, the category might be doing okay, but it's just the fact that on a same store basis for those brands, it's really hard to keep those numbers up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, quick service restaurants are still losing more customers than they're gaining. And if if you remember Chris Kempczinski in February saying grocery stores are looking pretty affordable right now.
Yeah.
And we got Walmart saying they're gaining share from restaurants.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of grocery stores are actively courting the restaurant customer. I mean, convenience stores have absolutely upgraded their food options and have more available to consumers. So it seems like maybe if people are trading down to quick service, I mean, they're also trading down to these other options.
Yeah.
And the result is that the industry is just losing customers right now.
Yeah. One of the things we've been tracking closely is the numbers that come from the Fed in terms of credit card debt and how much it's been spiking recently. But more than that, when you look at those consumers that are in serious delinquency, like 90 days or more late on their payments on credit card, the percentage of those has increased, and it's increased for all age groups. So the crunch is being felt throughout the whole society. And yes, at some point when you look at, okay, things are getting hard from a budget standpoint, from a spending standpoint, I got to go with where the dollar is going to stretch a little bit more. And yes, in a lot of cases, QSR. But given what you were saying, with grocery prices increasing at a much slower rate right now, even deflating, it's the expectation that was there at some point. It's really a lot more convenient there, or more affordable. One thing that's really interesting, though, to kind of complete that thought, is that we recently, and we love doing this at Black Box, is just kind of the analysis we call the best versus the rest. So the best performing companies or restaurants, what are they doing differently than the rest? So what we did is take a look at all the full service restaurants that we track, and we look at individual locations, not brands, but locations. And on full service, all the ones that we have on limited service, and take a look at the top 25% based on same store traffic. So which ones are doing better at retaining those consumers, some of them actually improving and growing their number of customers. And we took a look at their guest sentiment. We collect all that data through online reviews, dissect it, try to understand what they're saying. And what we saw is that, food is perceived a little different between the ones doing best versus the rest. Quality or service, all those are perceived as being better. But the one area that saw the biggest gap between the two was value sentiment. So the consumer was saying, like, if the value is there, that's what's going to drive me back to those restaurant locations. So again, going back to the consumer is a lot more price conscious now and a lot more value conscious, and it's a key driver behind what they're doing.
I mean, restaurants today. I mean, the thing is, the the gap, the one thing that it absolutely is the hallmark of an environment like this is a gap between the industry then splits off into haves and have-nots. And what's particularly interesting about the current environment is we see some haves and have-nots in the same sector. So Domino's and Papa John's had Domino's and Pizza Hut had a divergence in the first quarter. Popeyes and KFC had a divergence in the first quarter. Wingstop and roughly everybody else had a divergence in the first quarter. You see a change even within specific sectors. And the thing is, like, consumers today are not going to tolerate nonsense. You as a restaurant company have to do your job better. And to me, it goes back, I guess, to the value equation. They're willing to spend money on something that they perceive as good enough. And if the restaurant is not going to do that, they're absolutely going to vote with their pocketbook.
Absolutely.
If they think you're too expensive for what they're giving, they're getting, they're going to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
But if they feel they have to go, they'll spend to do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting when it comes to that perception of value. What we heard a lot in those reviews recently, starting last year, is worth it. The phrase "worth it" started coming up a lot more. So we all know things got really expensive. We went to the grocery store, went to the gas station, wherever you went, things were very expensive. And in case of restaurants, it happened as well. But as long as it's worth it, I'm good with it. Like, I know I'm paying more, but I expect things to be a lot better. Someone asked me yesterday, I think, about what sectors or what segments of the industry kind of excite me. Where's the growth or where? And I think where I went was like, it's not as much the segments themselves, but different players, the different companies, they're doing things differently. And it's, at the end of the day, it's about the basics of the industry that have been there forever, right? The basic execution on the things like, good quality food at a decent price, but great service. And the one thing we've really leaned into recently is take a look at the concept of hospitality. Of you can get a meal in many different ways if you're going to spend your time and money at a restaurant, especially if you're going there for dine-in. It really has to be more than that. There has to be that experience, that connection at a human level that will really compel you to spend a little bit more and feel like it was worth it.
Right. One of the concerns that I have right now, and it's certainly not even remotely limited to Red Lobster. But if you look at last year at Red Lobster, they lost $76 million. They had a $76 million net loss last year, and so their traffic down by 30%, but their sales actually grew in between 2019 and early 2023. Their sales was at a modest recovery status. But at some point, management freaked out about the loss of traffic, and then offered an endless shrimp deal, the now infamous endless shrimp deal that they priced too low. And customers flocked to the chain. The problem with discounts, aggressive discounts in any sector, is if you price it too low compared to your other offerings, customers are going to go to the lower priced offering, and that offering, because it was endless shrimp, was unprofitable.
Right.
All right. So you could see an industry right now, the industry is concerned almost to the point of alarm about traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that concerns me a little bit is we could see a lot of restaurants companies and that say, we really need to get this traffic back up. We're going to price aggressively. Too many customers go for the value option, and then what we end up having is these money losing companies then end up having to do a financial reorganization. Now, maybe, I mean, Red Lobster is an extreme example, but we definitely could see some real financial challenges on the part of a lot of restaurant companies because it's not like costs are getting any cheaper.
Right. Well, part of I think of what was happening with Red Lobsters when they were getting that lift in sales. I mean, they were riding the wave of the really big menu price increases that everyone was having, right? So at that point, like if their price was up by that much, but everyone else around them was up that much, it felt like okay, it was sustainable. But I'm sure at some point they say like, okay, at some point prices are going to moderate, and we need to bring that traffic back because we're not going to get that lift that we're getting, because of menu price at that point. The other thing that we've been seeing a lot in the data that's interesting is the guests moderating the spending to what they feel comfortable with, right? So whatever the restaurant brand is saying, we're going to increase our prices by 5%, that doesn't mean that the guest is going to pay 5% more, right? They're saying what I'm going to tolerate is 3.5, and that's really what ends up happening when they mix their shift their mix a little bit to make it happen. So I think one of the things that we've been thinking about and leaning into is the idea of having some entry points for that value consumer, regardless of maybe not go endless shrimp on it, but regardless of what you're doing, have some entry points where if somebody's a little bit more value conscious, if that's what's going to drive them through the door and spend some money with you, hopefully rediscover the brand in some cases, some brands that maybe you haven't gone to or haven't gone in a while, and that gives you the opportunity to come back in just for you to manage the check in a way that makes sense for you as a consumer, for you and your family. And then from there, maybe upgrade and upsell to some other higher spending down the road.
Yeah, the thing that I tend to like in an environment like this is like value engineered ideas. Like I mean, especially when we're talking about a franchise, but really about anything. If you can engineer a value offer, so you're making some money at least at the restaurant level, and because if you get into situations, I mean, the big problem with the endless shrimp deal was that it was ultimately a money loser for the company.
Yeah,
which is insane to me. Like,
right.
how would like it's like at some point you've got to make a profit in some form or fashion, or at least you've got to be able to guarantee. I mean, the restaurant industry is not like Costco. Like Costco has their $1.50 hot dog,
right?
And they're willing to take a loss on that, because they know that that's not their core product. Their core product is all that nonsense that they convince you to buy,
right?
In their stores. They want you in the stores, but whereas with restaurants, you can't really do that unless you're discounting like drinks or desserts or something like that, where you definitely know you're going to get an add-on. And that's why like kind of value engineering ideas seems to be the better idea, rather than giving an all you can eat discount.
Right. Yeah. That was an extreme and they've done it for years and it's worked on a limited time series. So they thought, well, it will work when we probably extend it to more than that, but clearly it did not. Right.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Any sectors you really like right now, or any menu types or sectors that you really, really like right now?
I think, new offerings, the snack offering has been really emerging, and I extend it to snack when it comes to like beverages, because that's the way I see it. Really, it's that middle of the day, want to have some treat. It might be liquid form, or it might be more of a solid if you go for a little pastry or donut or whatever it is. But I feel like that has been growing at a fast rate. When we look at the numbers, mid-afternoon has been a engine of potential growth there for the industry. People eating out or eating in a lot of cases. The fact that delivery extends the possibility. Before, you were maybe trapped in an office and you had an hour for lunch in the middle. Now, a lot of people working from home, or even if you're at the office, you're a delivery app away from getting a treat in the middle of the day. So, snacks, really, beverage within that has been really, really exciting, and a lot of momentum going on. So that one, I think, is the one that stands out as an add-on, as an additional category. And as things get expensive, you might be thinking, well, I'm not going to be spending money on an entire dinner out, but maybe I can buy a treat, for me in the middle of the afternoon and feel good about it.
Yeah. I mean, I love this. The snacking occasion is definitely taking off. I mean, it seems like that's an opportunity for a lot of different restaurants.
Yeah.
To find ways to you can provide value to consumers.
Yeah.
And maybe get some people in at different times of day. If you offer snacks and things like that,
Yeah.
probably.
Right. And I don't know if this is allowed, but I'm going to ask you the same question. What sector, what are you excited about?
Well, you mentioned the beverage sector.
Yeah.
But my view is always different. But I mean, chicken is always, I think boneless chicken or like handheld chicken right now is absolutely taken off. And I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. So there's absolute growth. The one that interests me, because you mentioned beverages, I could talk about beverages all day, because the beverage sector right now is fascinating. Think about this for a second. Beverage attach in restaurants has been declining, right? The Subway, the monumental move of Subway back to Pepsi was partly due because the company wants to regain some beverage attach, and they needed a contract that would help them modernize their beverage offerings. That is a common situation in the restaurant industry today, because in most restaurants, particularly like fast food and fast casual, have a limited beverage selection. And then more of the occasions are delivery and takeout, and so people don't always get a drink.
Right.
Which is why bundled meals make a ton of sense. Get that drink add-on. Convince them to find a way to get that drink add-on. But like that drink occasion inside at restaurants has been shrinking, right? Well, look at what's going on. It's in the beverage sector.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Right. The fastest growing restaurant chains right now in the United States are beverage concepts like Seven Brew and Dutch Bros and companies like that. Like, I mean, Starbucks had some issues. Their issues to me are separate from the things they've got they definitely have a definitive social media problem. But if you look at how consumers are consuming beverages today, is broadening, and people are drinking more types of beverages than they ever did. They're drinking boba teas. You got teenage boys, right?
Yeah.
They drink all kinds of weird beverages that you don't.
Right.
That's right. And so the consumers broadening how they get beverages.
Yeah.
And they're going out for beverages more often. They're just not getting it with their meal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. The one thing that I'm really interested to see what happens is with Cosmics. And right. The franchisees in the McDonald's system want to see Cosmics want to see those more popular Cosmics beverages brought to McDonald's.
Yeah.
And you could make an argument that McDonald's, or any other chain, could use some better beverage innovation to get people excited about getting a drink
Right.
at a restaurant. So that's fascinating to me.
I like the idea from Cosmic of having it as a separate entity, right? So you're playing in that beverage space aggressively. You have all that innovation there. You're not trying to be everything within the McDonald's box, which I feel like at some point they try to be, and that kind of backfired a little bit. So they keep, their core at the McDonald's box, but they have this new thing they can build on and ride the trend. And like you were saying, and maybe the really popular items there can come back and enhance what they have at McDonald's and build it from there. So it's really exciting. Can't wait to go and try one, because I haven't been able to.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Right.
But what happens with that chain is going to be fascinating. There's a definite reason why McDonald's wants to get in there. This is where a large amount of growth is. And again, I think a lot of brands could probably and should start experimenting with your beverage offerings. You don't have to add and you could get people in maybe at different times of day, generate some sort of add-on sales or something along those lines, because if we talk about consumers getting excited right now, I think my sense of things is that the average consumer isn't that excited about most restaurants' beverage programs.
And one thing you mentioned was interesting about Beverage is the generational thing. Like that the younger generation Z and that they grew with a Starbucks there all the time, like, and that was part of their upbringing, right? You go and grab a Starbucks in the middle. So it's a good category to expand on from a generation standpoint.
That is. Victor, this was great. Really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Oh, happy to be here. Happy to finally get the chance to do it.
Never worry again about sales tax with Davo by Avalera. From collecting to filing to paying, Davo works seamlessly with your POS, backed by a guarantee that your taxes will be paid on time and in full. You take care of the business, we'll take care of the sales tax.